few days ago, the War Within Season 2 MDI Global Finals concluded in heart-stopping fashion. I'm Sean from Raider.io, and today we're sitting down with some of the fierce competitors we watched battle it out to discuss the changes and all the top moments from the weekend. With us for this Raider.io roundtable, we have the Wunderbar tanking legend now, Missed Counts shock collar extraordinaire Verb, and the dog himself, Perplexed's very own Tobo. Thanks for being here, gentlemen.
Hello.
Yo, what's up?
First, I want to say a huge congratulations to Now and the whole Wunderbar team for taking home the title in an incredible performance, and a big shout out to all of the other teams for giving us arguably the best keep pushing MDI Global Finals that we've ever seen. Before we dive into it, let's do a quick set of introductions for any new viewers who might not know who you are. Robin, we'll start with you. Can you tell us who you are, what you play, and where folks can find you?
Yeah, I'm now I'm the tank for well, we're called Wunderbar now. I guess we have had many names throughout the years, but currently Wunderbar. I've been I don't know how many years it is now. 5, 6 years maybe. I've been doing MDI and TGP, the old format for, I guess. Also a raider or a tank, I guess, in Method for the upcoming Race World First. And yeah, exciting months ahead. That's me.
Perfect. Where, if somebody wants to find you, where can they see your content?
On YouTube. Nah, I'm kidding, not on YouTube, but on Twitch you can find me at twitch.tv/now.
Perfect.
And yeah, that's why I live stream most of the days.
Excellent. It's great content. Definitely recommend checking it out. Verb, let's go with you next.
Hello, I'm Verb. I'm from Missed Count, obviously. I played a DK there this season of the MDI. And I'm also a melee DPS in Echo.
Excellent. Do you stream anywhere? Is there anywhere people can find you?
Yeah, I do stream occasionally on twitch.tv/VerbiaTV. You can find me there occasionally.
Excellent. And Tobo?
Hi, I'm Tobo. This was my first season with Perplexed, and I was shot calling for them. I usually play Druid. It's kind of my main spec. And I raid in Liquid as a DPS, and that's about it for me, I guess. You can find me on twitch.tv/Tobo.
Perfect. All right. Definitely recommend checking all these channels out. Fantastic content. If you want to see the best of the best doing what they're best at, then you need to check out their streams. All right. So we're going to jump right into it here. Verb, I want to start with you. This question will direct to you, and then we'll open it up to everybody. But this was your first global finals, if I'm not mistaken. Did you expect it to be this competitive coming in? And was there any extra pressure on you? Because you were also, like Tobo, you were also the shot caller for Missed Count.
Yeah, I was the shot caller, and it was also my first finals. As you said, it was my first season playing with the team, of course. And I knew that the expectations were high, and I needed to just play my best, of course. And of course, I hope I performed as good as my team hoped I would.
No complaints from our end.
Question again? Sorry.
I was just wondering if, like, coming in, did you expect, because you guys are very, very competitive on the live leaderboards, were you expecting the competition to be so fierce and so incredibly close in the finals?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we expected the best from the other teams, of course. We knew it was going to be just an absolute, like, fierce competition, and we were not sure if we were going to be able to compete for the win. I'd say we came close. I'd say we definitely came close to competing for the win, and we lived up to. I would say we lived up to expectations, even though we didn't end up taking home the win.
Perfect. Robin, this is not your first rodeo and not your first global finals. Now, from a viewer standpoint, it was extremely competitive, extremely close, and maybe the closest ever. It's the first TGP style MDI that didn't end with a team winning by a key level. They won by time. Obviously, it was you guys. When you were coming in, like, can you rate and compare this level of competition in the globals in the finals to previous seasons?
I feel like this MDI, we call it now, right? Not TGP anymore, but this MDI think we were the most prepared I think we've ever been for a high key tournament. Normally we don't really play that much on live servers like Verb's team does maybe. We don't really push for the leaderboards on live servers. So we usually have to learn a bit as we start practicing. But this time around we actually did push a bit on live, and yeah, practice was going really, really well as well. Because normally we get this tournament buff where we might not time the keys we do during the broadcast. But in practice, for example, like 23 Dark Flame already timed in practice. But normally that's something we might not do in practice. And then when you actually play, you get this tournament buff, we call it, where you just take it to another level. So we were feeling pretty, I wouldn't say confident, but we were confident in ourselves, I guess, in a way where we knew that we just played our game. We could time the keys we wanted to time. Then sadly, we had some mishaps in our mother load. We also timed in practice. I don't know if we timed it or not, but we were like, we knew we could time it, and we were going through the entire dungeon at a good pace and everything. But we knew it was tight on time. And having like 1-2 deaths was, of course, very... With our routing, we played a little bit more of a safe route. So, yeah, we knew it was going to be a rough one. And, yeah, we could have played a bit better in Motherload and stuff like that. And then we wanted to do Cinderbrew 22 as well, but we kind of ran out of time and played it safe and went to increase our timer instead on the +21 in there. But yeah, overall, I was... yeah, it was a smart but a bit more of a boring decision. But I was not going to say boring, because I think this, from a viewer standpoint, I'm pretty sure this MDI might have been the most entertaining ever to watch, with us and Mandatory going, miscount kind of... I don't know the exact score, but it felt like it was 3 or 4 teams all the way to the end, pretty much. So I think it was very, very entertaining to watch. But yeah, it was probably the most, winning, one of the best feelings in a long time. Taking it home.
Yeah, it was very, very competitive. It was, I can confirm from a viewer standpoint, it was like nail biting right down to the wire. The chat was blowing up, cheering for different teams, pushing, the last moment. It was pretty good stuff. Tobo, I want to talk to you because you and Verb have a similar experience where it was both your first season with the team you were in, and you were both shot calling, and the level of competition is so high. What does that do to your nerves coming in?
I mean, the nerves coming into the finals, it felt kind of the same as usual, just because, in practice you just get so used to, doing the same stuff over and over. So shot calling at that point wasn't really like an issue. I guess like everything was kind of set in stone and everything. And I even knew what to do if like something went a little bit wrong. I was like, I have this stop as a backup in this place and everything like that. So by the finals, it was fine. Definitely coming into it at the start, it was like a lot to come into, and obviously with a new team, even though I like knew the guys very well already, it was definitely took a little bit of getting used to and getting more comfortable in the team and everything. So probably more like the start of it was the biggest difference for me, and then it got better as it got along. And I think you could see that with like how we improved through the tournament as well. That was kind of like a big thing for us, I'd say.
Nice. Was it similar for you, Verb, coming in as the new face on the team and then also being shot caller? And actually, were you given shot caller, or did you show up and be like, I'm Verb, I'm going to be the shot caller?
I think in the past they've had like Kiro shot calling a lot before I joined, which is often it's not ideal to have your tank shot call, because if your tank makes a mistake or something, it's quite often a lot more punishing than if a DPS would make a similar mistake. So they were definitely like looking for someone, I think, to help out with that, and I knew I was capable of helping in that area. So I definitely like came into the team, I suppose, with the idea that that would be a role that I was going to take.
Cool. Excellent stuff. It was a great weekend. Very exciting. All the teams did great. We're going to pivot a bit. We'll talk some more about the weekend and like seeing a new route that a team unveils, and you have to decide, do we copy it or do we try and fix it? We'll talk about how some of those routes get made up. But first, I want to dip into the decision by Blizzard. We're going to talk about some of the changes now in the tournament. I want to first talk about their decision to merge MDI and TGP into one event, essentially eliminating the speed running aspect of MDI. And Robin, we'll start with you, just because I know you have a ton of experience with both formats. How did you feel when they came out and they announced that this would be the way going forward?
Well, I will always be a fan of speedrunning, I think, because you can do more crazy things when it comes to speedrunning. There's more things people have never done before and haven't really thought about, like crazy snaps and crazy big pulls and playing stuff with the bosses, which in high keys is extremely difficult to do. And it's more about like having a safer route, making sure you don't make mistakes along the way. But I do think that it's hard for the community and the people that don't play MDI themselves to kind of connect with MDI and have a good viewer experience, especially if one team wipes early on in a dungeon. The game is kind of over already, right? Then you have these weird or like rare moments where two teams are neck to neck in an MDI setting, and it's a difference between just a few seconds. So I would definitely, I prefer from a player perspective, I do prefer MDI or like speedrunning. But from a viewer, I understand why they kind of changed it, because as I just said, it's hard to relate to if you're not playing it yourself to speedrun, because you never do this on live service, right? So I do think it's a wise decision, because it's also not you got kind of burned out going from MDI straight into TGP before. You never really had a break. I'm a bit sad that we will lose speedrunning, but overall I think it's a healthy decision, I guess, for WoW esport.
Yeah. Ferb, I see you nodding there. Do you have some thoughts on the...
No, I'm just agreeing with what he's saying. Like you see it in the MDI, like the speedrunning obviously version of the MDI. You just see things you've never seen before, more so than in the TGP format. The teams will just have to come up with so many more innovative routes and solves to the dungeons that you're just never going to see on live servers, or when you see people pushing keys on live servers. And definitely I do think that from a viewer perspective, when you're watching the TGP, you can connect to it way easier, because you're often maybe pushing these keys on live yourself with your own team. And you can just maybe try to play the routes that these teams do, etc., which is just not really relevant in the speedrunning format, of course.
Yeah. Tobo, do you have any thoughts on which do you prefer, maybe?
Yeah, I definitely prefer the MDI format, the old MDI format. It just feels a lot more fun to me, I guess. If there's no other explanation, it's just the way that you put together the routes and everything is a lot more impactful than progressing through the key and like living certain pulls and figuring out how to push keys. I mean, there is the like going the extra key level higher, I think is really interesting on in the TGP format, where you see like the 23 Dark Flame or the 23 Motherlode, 22 Cinder, 22 TOP. All of that stuff is like that level above is definitely interesting, but across the whole board, I definitely say I prefer MDI.
Yeah. Does it cut down on practice time required any, because it's so close to what happens on retail? So a team like Miscount, who's playing together on live a lot, do you maybe have to practice less? And maybe does Wunderbar have to practice more because you're not running keys together this whole time?
I think from my POV, I think you have to practice more for the TGP, including the time before the time trials being like so much more impactful.
Mm-hmm.
Like playing on live servers and pushing keys, because it's just 1-to-1 with what you're doing on the tournament realm. Obviously not exactly, because you have to go through and change things from what people are doing on live afterwards. But yeah, I definitely think in MDI it's a lot more viable to just show up and kind of come to the keys when tournament realm opens and start playing there. But definitely want to get that practice in before in TGP, I'd say.
Okay. Robin, what about you guys? Do you find, how does the TGP what is now MDI, I promise I'll stop saying TGP soon, Blizzard. How does it impact your practice schedule?
Yeah, I don't think it impacts our practice schedule, to be honest, because we usually always play the same amount, no matter if we have practice before or not. As I said, this time we did practice a lot more before time trials came out and stuff, so we were more prepared for what was about to, hit us, I guess. But it didn't mean we practiced less. Instead, we just had, as I said, we had more time to focus on like these key levels that were potentially possible, maybe not possible. Like Tobo said, the 23 Madalo, Dark Flame, 22 Cinder, and Theater, where we had extra time to just sit there for like a few days and really try and figure it out, which I think really helped us this tournament. So that's definitely a good thing, but it doesn't mean we practice less. It's just we have more time, as I said, to focus on different aspects of the tournament. And then for MDI, also as Tobo said, you cannot really practice this on live service before because it's so unique and different from pushing keys, right? So even if you sit and play live servers and you push keys with a team, it's not really gonna give you too much of an advantage going into speedrunning, right? So it's
Yeah. Cool. Okay, Verb, I'm going to give you the question that I'm certain everybody is the most excited to talk about, and that is the spec lockout rule that was implemented for the group weekends. When you read this rule, what was your initial reaction, and how did Missed Count go about tackling this specific challenge?
I guess my initial reaction was just, oh god, we're gonna have to test every spec in the game, right? You just have to map out everything to find the best specs. But I mean, you just always have kind of an idea, right, of what specs are good and not. So like piecing together what specs work like the second best, right? It didn't prove that difficult as you would have thought. But I mean, I think it's a good attempt for sure. Like at just spicing it up, bringing in some fresh I guess fresh classes and specs to the tournament that you would just normally not see because it's just not beneficial usually, right? To just bring a subpar spec to this type of competition. But with this rule, you get to see more diverse compositions, which is a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely gave us a spectrum of classes. Tobo, what was your approach to it? What did the team sit down and say? Okay, how did you decide which team or which specs you wanted to save for your group stage finals?
I mean, well, luckily we were in Cup C, so a lot of it we could just see what other teams did and copy exactly what they did, basically. But we came to it sort of like a week before and was like, we need these specs open on day 3, and then how do we work back from that and make sure that we ban like specific specs. So even though we were playing like Destrolock a lot in the day 1, we wanted that open for the Cinderbrew because we were playing it in there at the time. So we needed to do a bit of weird spec swapping in like one key where we would make sure that like Fire Mage, Frosty K, and Rest of Shaman would get banned, or it was Guardian Druid actually. So just I think you only needed to fix like one key or something with that. So that was a little bit interesting at least. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, we just copied what other people were doing and didn't really try to put too much time into it. Of course, we didn't know how good the other teams were going to be on our day 1, so I had to put in a bit of extra time on those low specs, but thankfully it was fine anyway. And
we saw some teams playing the quote unquote meta comp on their day 1 to try and get to the weekend, almost as if they were just sort of like, hey, we just want to get to the final, to the group stage weekend. We know we're not going to compete against these teams that have saved these longer ones. Was there any concern for any of your teams, any of you across the board, of a team like sneaking into the finals and you missing out because you weren't playing a stronger comp? Robin, we'll go with you.
With me? Okay. No, I wouldn't say so. Just because of the fact that you were allowed to play your strongest comp as long as it wasn't played the most, right? So when you did the most challenging keys, you could still play the meta comp, we can call it. But if it would have been that any spec you play during day 1 cannot be played during day 3, then of course it would have been a way bigger challenge, right? Because then we couldn't play any spec we wanted to play day 3. But since we were allowed now to play in the highest key level, our meta comp, it wasn't really too stressful, I guess. And also, I see why Blizzard also did it this way, because they want to bring more variety into MDI and, showcase more. There is more specs than the 5 being played because they're the best. But I do feel like it was. I don't know if I liked it myself. I liked aspects of it, but it was also, I don't think it planned out the way they wanted it to play out. Whereas it was a bit weird where some teams would just play the meta comp that maybe didn't have as much time to practice, and they would play that day 1, and then there was not even a reason for them to really play day 3, which I think is a really weird thing, that like they probably didn't have enough time to practice another comp. They just went with their comfort picks, what should play on live servers, and then they made it to day 3, but then they just had to play weird things, and there was no point to even kind of play, which I think is a really bad feeling for these teams. So while I see why they did it, I think it kind of not backfired, but maybe they should do it in another way next time if they want to showcase more specs, which I do think is a good thing. Showcasing more specs in MBI, I think is a great thing. It's just this format or system maybe wasn't the best way to do it. That makes sense.
Yeah. One of the other issues we saw was in their day 1, there were certain teams that they're already guaranteed to be going on to Sunday, but they couldn't do any more keys higher because they would have then potentially locked out the comps that they wanted. So from a viewer standpoint, that doesn't feel great. From a player standpoint, how does that feel, Verb? When you get in that situation where you're like, well, we don't want to do another key that gives us time or score, like, what do you do?
We, of course, I'm assuming that the other teams had a similar idea, because we wanted to play these like worse comps as little as possible, of course. So we were like just making spreadsheets, right? Figure out exactly how many keys, like we knew what kind of keys we were going to do. And we just mapped it out, like how many keys did we have to do with the off meta classes, and then how many keys did we then give ourselves at the end of the day with the meta specs, right? And of course, when we did the keys that we knew we were like, we're going to do, as you say, we like can't really just keep spamming keys with the meta comp, because then you're gonna like go over the threshold to ban those specs instead, which would have been could have been rather catastrophic, of course.
Yeah, definitely could have been catastrophic. Really glad you didn't. Tobo, is there any world where you would like to see the spec rule implemented in the global finals, or do you want the global finals to stay pure with teams just on the best classes?
Yeah, the finals feels like doing anything like that would just not feel great. It's just like let's see the best World of Warcraft we can. Like the best gameplay possible, and why impose some kind of awkward ruling to just like in the other side you can just have the best keys timed possible and everything. So that is like the most interesting way that we can go. I think leave the global finals to itself.
I feel like that's probably unanimous across the board. Do either of you disagree? Would either of you really want to play Guardian Druid on global finals?
Guardian Druid I wouldn't mind playing. I like playing Guardian Druid actually, because you don't have aggro issues on Guardian Druid, so I don't mind that at all. It's the most annoying thing to play when you play Vengeance. You always have aggro issues. So playing Guardian was actually pretty. It was a nice feeling to not have aggro issues, I guess, once.
You got to tell the guys to wait for 3 Sunders. It's
not. The Demon Hunter is just bugged. It has been bugged in Shadowlands, and they never fix it. So I don't know. It's how many times I've reported the issues. But now they fixed Reaver's Glaive at least, and I think Citadel of Spite was fixed as well, like something. But yeah, it's always you just pull a pack with Immolation Aura, and then the healer it's like dispels you and he gets aggro on the entire pack, and it's like crazy how that can happen, right? When you really did damage to the pack as a tank. It's not the nicest feeling, I guess, but
No.
maybe one day it'll be fixed.
Maybe one day. So no to the spec rule then.
I mean, I'm actually down for this. I don't know if I would be. It's hard to say now. I think it would be funny or interesting, I guess, at least. But I feel like it would maybe have to change it where maybe it would be like in this dungeon you need to play. You get like a list of 10 specs, and you need to play maybe like 2 of the specs, and then it's maybe 2 tank specs. So let's say it's 8 specs. It's 4 DPS specs, 2 healer specs, and 2 tank specs, and you need to choose like 2 of these specs to play in the dungeon. So you can kind of choose what you want to play. I think it would be interesting, but it might be it's hard to know right now if it would actually be fun to play or if it would just feel horrible, because you add another layer of kind of skill in that where you need to make a smart decision what you want to bring, right?
Yeah, I think you just pitched the best idea for a Mythic Plus charity event I've ever heard. So we'll talk after. I think that would be great. Let's talk about the break in between your group stage finishes and the global finals. For Group C, anyway, and the global finals, there was a 2-week break. Verb, what do you do with that 2 weeks? And is that too long of a break between the end of the stages and finals?
I mean, we were just slamming practice, right? Just trying to improve wherever we could in all the dungeons that we could. Just trying to be as prepared as possible for the finals.
Yep. You don't. There's no holidays. You're not on the beach. You're like, okay, we got 2 weeks off. I'm gonna go get some Mai Tais.
I mean, during this period, the focus was, of course, on the finals.
Yeah, definitely. Tobo, what about you? Do you wish the time was shorter? Would you rather have gone right into the finals at the end of Group C?
I think going right into the finals is, I mean, if it was like only a week after, it would just be like maybe the worst for Cup C or like Group C. So maybe like too much of a disadvantage for those guys. But I don't know. I think the whole overall time spent in the tournament was pretty good this time around. I don't think it was too long. Like maybe even it being a little bit longer would have been nice for our practice, but I don't know how it really went for other teams. And yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't too long is the good thing, I think, this time.
That's good. Robin, how about you? How was the time gap for you?
It was. We didn't play every single day after our cup. We also played in Group A, which I think is an advantage because you're kind of first out, and then you just have a long, time of period where you can just sit and practice for globals. So you're kind of done with your cup early. You can just leave that behind and then just solely focus on what you want to do for globals, right? Meanwhile, I think for Tobo, they had to play the last cup and they didn't even have the increased item level and corruption, I think.
Yeah.
So they kind of lost practice time where we could sit and practice with. It was a bit weird this time around because we could think corruption came out on like the Thursday or like increased item level or something. And they were not allowed to play with it in their cup, but we could sit and practice with increased item level, which I think was a mistake from Blizzard's side. That you probably have, released that after their cup, because it would not be a nice feeling sitting there knowing other teams were already practicing for globals and you just had to play your cup first before you could do that yourself. At the same time, I do think it was a really nice, because the main issue with TGP and MDI, I guess, is that you have the group stages and then nothing really changes going into global, so we just see the same thing again. But now we actually did have the increased item level and corruption. So we did see, I think the highest key before in the group stage was 21 Dark Flame. Now we actually got to see a 23 Dark Flame in the globals. Same with Motherload and Cinderbrew and most dungeons, right? You just went up 1 or 2 key levels in each dungeon, which I think was a really good thing. I don't know if this is a plan they have like going forward. I don't think they would ever tailor the game after, their esport competitions, right? But it was definitely a very positive thing this time around, where we were all like, I guess, kind of scared that global would just feel so repetitive from the group stage and the same keys would just be done back to back, which turned out to be false.
Yeah, definitely. It was the globals was so exciting. It was, especially that second day, it was like world record. It was just the day of world records. It was crazy.
Yeah, we
My
did have
condolences to
like
anybody who has to do highlights.
yeah, I don't know if I like I know my Tobo and Verb, you're mainly like DPS players, so this didn't but like this avoidance thing everyone had on their gear, I'm not sure I was the biggest fan of this. It did allow you to I guess push higher key levels because it did take less damage. It's generally a healer and DPS thing where most mechanics you take damage from are can be reduced by avoidance. As a tank, you don't really get stronger with avoidance because like 95% of the damage you take is just melee attacks where avoidance doesn't work, right? So how did you guys feel about that? I guess because I didn't like it that much myself.
I did sympathize with my tank, of course, because it's kind of comparatively to the team, your tank is getting weaker in a way, right?
Yeah,
Because your team is getting stronger, your team is just getting tankier against a lot of mechanics, and then your team's like, oh my god, we need to do a higher key, but your tank is like just taking the same damage, right? So yeah, I think it's maybe if they would have added this, they should have maybe like not made it all avoidance or something. Maybe your tank could have picked leech or something just to help them out a little bit.
do you think you could have timed the same key levels without avoidance, or do you think it was actually that carried you? I mean, for example, in Priory, I don't know if 21 would have been doable just with the paladin avoidance, right? But are there some keys you think you wouldn't have been able to time without avoidance?
I think the same thing for like the Dark Flame candle guys. Like you would need damage reduction for every single hit you take from those, right? If
Yeah,
you didn't have
probably.
avoidance. So maybe you would have to play a smaller pull or something, or line of sight them all the time. But yeah, I mean, it felt a little bit too easy to lift things in general for DPS, I think. I don't know if other teams had different experiences, but especially just like the avoidance mechanics, it was like I don't even need to press a defensive on the first boss in Motherload or something. I don't even need to think about it. I'm just like playing a target dummy fight, and there's no interesting like trying to live on that or anything. So maybe that was a little bit too easy.
Yeah, I felt a bit dungeon specific, I guess, with avoidance. Where in some dungeons, I think Cinderbrew, you didn't really feel avoidance too much. Maybe on like Bank Busby, but the first boss debuffs and stuff was still
Yeah.
the same, So definitely rough and Cinderbrew, I think.
You really felt it now, what mechanics like avoidance worked on and what they didn't.
If I felt it?
No, I just said we felt it. In
Oh
general,
yeah,
you just felt
exactly.
it.
Yeah, yeah. As a tank, you don't really notice that too much
Yeah,
because
of course.
I love it. I love it. All right. There was one last change, the avoidance. I love that we brought that up. So we'll check that off the list. There was one last change they made in the format of the MDI, and that was they brought back a double elimination. So day 1, day 2, double elimination for the global finals. How do you feel about that? Does that adjust your strategy at all? And are you glad they brought it back, or would you rather have seen all 8 teams have the opportunity to carry out for the whole weekend?
who goes if you throw it to someone?
We'll go Tobo.
Well, we actually almost got eliminated on day 2. It was kind of close. With 07, I think they were only like 30 seconds behind us. But well, for day 2, we had to focus on the tiebreakers at that time instead of like trying to go for the overall win by the end of the Sunday. So that always feels a little bit weird to not like do the most efficient thing, but actually be scared to be knocked out on the first couple of days. As well, like on the first day, it's a bit different because we had 8 teams this time. But if you had a bad first day, then you can just get knocked out. Like if you deplete one key really late, there was one season where Mandatory wiped on the last boss in Vortex Pinnacle, and they literally got kicked out because of that. So it's like that never feels good. I mean, this time I think the bottom few teams were a little bit lower, but I think if the whole like 8 teams were top 1 spot contenders, like you should have them play until the Sunday, even though maybe the viewership experience is a lot worse with 8 teams. Like still kind of think if the quality of teams is there, then they should be able to play.
Verb.
I think it's interesting in a way, I guess, that you have the pressure on you just every day in the weekend. You have to just play good every day, at risk of getting sent home if you don't. If you have just an off day on the first day, you miss like Tobo mentioned, like one key at the end, it could just send you home. At the same time, it's a bit unfortunate, I guess, like the scenario Tobo described, where they had to change their strategy at the end of day 2 to play it safe to make sure they made it to Sunday, and maybe it hurts their like overall end result because of it. It's a bit unfortunate, but yes.
Sorry, you go. Sorry.
No, I'm done. I think you go ahead.
Okay, I apologize. No, I wanted to ask Tobo, like, where was it you feel like you changed strats, like, to not get knocked out? What they said it was day 2, right?
Oh, it was mostly just that we went for time in, I think it was Cinderbur. Like, we just kept running the 21 for time, even though we knew that we had to work on like the 23 motherload, for example, for the like to have a chance of winning the final day, which we like hadn't done in practice. So it was like a lot of work that we would have needed to put in there. But having to go back and focus on the tiebreaker instead of like pushing forward was like kind of a weird feeling, I guess. But I mean, you know, we almost got knocked out, so it was like I had to do it.
Yeah.
Do you regret that choice?
Not really. I mean, I don't think we would have been able to contend in the last day for the top places anyway, just because of like the gap between the top few teams. But yeah, I mean, it made us get through to the 4th spot at least, so
Yeah.
not gonna regret that.
Robin, you were going to say something there. I think I cut you off. I'm a terrible host.
Yeah, no worries. No, I wanted to ask Verb actually, because we were kind of keeping like track on other teams, and like day 2, for example, we were feeling pretty good because we didn't really expect another team to go in and kind of time a 23 mud. We knew that we could time a 23 mud load, but we felt like it was extremely hard, and it was not something you would just go in and 3-shot. And I think you guys just went in there and you really did it within like an hour of entering the key. And we were all kind of, because we felt really good. And then at the end of the day, we like depleted by 9 seconds and we're like, oh shit. And then we just watched you guys and you time it with like, I don't know, it was 20 seconds or 30 seconds or something with 4 deaths. And we're like, oh. And like, did you actually know that you could time it this like not easily, but you know, with 4 deaths? And was that more of a god run that just procced in the tournament?
I really think we had a major case of tournament buff in that run. We didn't actually time this key in practice, and I don't think anyone expected us to just time it with such a big leeway. With, like I said, with the 4 deaths, that was definitely not expected. But yeah, after that run, at the end of day 2, we also felt great, of course, about that run.
Yeah.
At the end of that, do you go and look at their route, Robin? Do you guys go, okay, listen, how did we have no deaths and miss this by 9 seconds and they had 4? Do you go back and look and see what they did?
Yeah, I mean, I knew their MDT like inside and out after they played it, but they basically did 1 less pull than we did in the dungeon. But it made the dungeon even more risky because you added a few mobs. When you add a few mobs to like pulls here and there, they die slower and you know, they become more challenging. So I think like the first pull they did in before the first boss, they played like 4 Earth Shapers and additional like sappers and stuff, which makes the pull die maybe like 10-15 seconds slower. So just copying that without practicing it is not, I mean, you can do it, but it's not the easiest because it changes like cooldown timings and everything, right? But I do feel like that we maybe played too safe in Motherload with adding 1 more pull. And we should have done what I think Mandatory also did the same. Where I even think Mandatory copied Miscount route in the end. I'm not sure, I might be making this up, but I think it looked like they were playing the same route, unless they both somehow had the exact same route. I'm not 100% sure about that. But yeah, I think we should maybe have gone a little bit more ham, I guess, in the Motherload and played it a bit more risky. But at the same time, we knew we could time the Motherload from practice with the route we had. We just needed to execute it, right? So if you have an easy route to execute, but you need to execute it. You cannot have like these 4 deaths that Miscount had. It's kind of, that's just like a decision you make, right? Do we want to play an easy route and make sure we don't die, or do we want to risk it, have harder pulls, but we can, you know, lose a player here and there? It's just like a team decision at that point, right? Whatever you prefer.
Yeah, that's I love that you're bringing this up, because along with Motherlode, another one of the key dungeons that we saw in this weekend was Theater of Pain, that obviously you guys did exceptionally well in with a very unique route. Tobo and or Verb, when you see Wunderbar come out and they execute this Theater of Pain, and it's like ridiculously fast is the only way to describe it. Do you instantly, and especially as shot callers, do you look at this and go, okay, we need to learn exactly what they did and copy it? Or did you already have similar ideas? How do you make that adjustment on the fly going into the last day?
I can go, I guess. I mean, as soon as it happened like mid tournament, and then we sort of knew that there was something in their route that we like didn't have, because you know, if you can, like, we couldn't possibly do a 22 with our path, so needed to go and check it after the day. But it was a little bit similar to something that happened in the old MDI, like in one of the old Shadowlands ones, but just a little bit different, where you would go back and take the portal back to the other platform, and that was really smart, but that didn't really work back then in that MDI because the portal time was too long and everything. So I sort of had a good idea of how that would work, but you know, after the day ended, we just went through the path together, and then went through M0, did all the snaps, and made sure we understood the timings. Like, there was like something with the last boss where you would need to wait for the floor to close so the tank gets the instant teleport up instead of like long travel, something like that for the snap. And then we just ran through M0 like 4 or 5 times until we had it like pretty good. And I mean, we didn't actually get to go in there in the tournament because we didn't have enough time, but yeah, I think we would have, I mean, we would have got like some part through it. Maybe we wouldn't have even been able to copy the whole thing though, because it was just a little bit too much change probably.
Okay, Verb, you guys did attempt to recreate the run. What was that like?
I mean, it was difficult, of course, first of all. When we saw them, that they had timed the 22 theater, we were just mind blown. Of course, we didn't think it was doable. Just based on our practice and our runs, we weren't even trying to progress the 22 theater in practice. And like at the end of day 2, we timed the 23 mudload, and we were like, just purely based on the ending of day 2, we were in just a great position, to be honest. The problem was we hadn't prepared 22 Cinder, and we hadn't prepared 22 Theater. And we saw Wunderbar had a very close run at the end of the day in 23 Mudload. We knew they were going to be able to do it on Sunday. And we had to just sit down and think, like, with us not having prepped either of these 22s, what is our like path to victory, right? And we knew we had to do at least one 22. Either Cinder or Theater. And if we don't, we are just not going to win. And we knew that. So we just did our best at just piecing together their Theater route, which was just insane, of course. We just thought that was our best path to victory, I guess.
Yeah.
But of course, it was. Sorry, go on.
You thought Theater was easier than Cinderbrew for your team? If you had to pick one between them?
Yeah, that's what we thought. We hadn't practiced Cinder 22 at all either, really. So, and I guess in a way, the 22 Theater looked easy when you guys did it, I guess.
I think Theater
which is also just a compliment to you guys, of course, because it was not easy when we were doing it.
Yeah, I do think though that Theater is like mechanically, it is more of a routing thing where like everything has to be done right, and you can like mess up a lot of things with like the route. and snaps, and like it's very technical, I guess is the right term. Meanwhile, Cinderbrew is probably like, I think it's harder to play. It's easier to die from just like damage intake. But yeah, it's just, I'm sure if you guys had like another week and you knew the route, I'm sure you could have done the 22 theater as well. It's just when you have one night and you can't even do it in M+, you just need to do it in M0. It's when it's such a technical dungeon, I feel like it's really rough because I think I watched Kiva stream even like the last day in our break, and he was like sitting in your break with MDT open off theater, and like it looked like he had a strat meeting, you know. It was like, okay, dude, you know.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, I just saw him with like MDT open and
very possible. Very possible.
Did you consider just sending Robin a DM and saying, "Hey, can you send me over this route?"
No, I mean that would have been too cheap, I guess.
Let's talk about that Theater of Pain pathing. Who comes up with that? How do you guys figure out this is going to work?
I mean, so like it's like everyone has a part of it, I guess. But usually I'm the chef or a cooker. Like I'm the one who likes to cook. I'm usually sitting up until like 5 a.m. thinking like outside the box what is possible and what is not possible. And I think like throughout our like entire journey of MDI, we've had a lot of crazy routes. And I'm not gonna take credit for all of them because, like I said, we're a team and people add like different pieces of the puzzle, and we kind of come up with a end product together, right? But it's usually like I have an initial spark of something like let's try and do this, let's try and do that, and then people implement what they thought about, and then we cook something together, and that's the end result. For example, with like the Arbalest, Kush he played Frost instead of Unholy, and it's like let's just mind control this guy. We don't need the count. I'm just gonna leave him at the boss. I'm gonna release him at the end of the fight. We shackle him and we just meld him off after, stuff like that. I didn't even think about that, right? And then, of course, it wouldn't be possible without Gingy. He knows what we can handle in terms of AV stop and all that stuff. And that's I would just say it's a team effort to make everything work. Because there's so many different pieces of the puzzle that needs to be put together for it to work in the end. And I think like our Dawn of the Infinite in MDI last time around was also a prime example of this, where I might have had an initial spark of something, but then like I don't know if I can say, but Saleh had like this moment where he was the one wrathing the mob and then melding and getting recombat, snapping the mobs. Like it's so many different aspects where people bring their own thoughts into it, and then you just combine everything, and it becomes this great end product. And I also think like we have so much experience as a team that we kind of know what's doable and what's not doable at this point. We kind of quickly know if something is burnt, I guess. And we don't really waste too much time trying to practice that.
How much of an advantage do you think the experience plays for you guys, where so many of you have played together for so long? Robin.
I think it has like a great advantage in some aspects, but in other aspects it doesn't. Because like our team, we're jealous of like Verb's team, like Miscount team, because it just like when they play, they look so fearless. They just go in there and it's like a bit like YOLO, and they just like run it down. They die here and there. They have a crazy route. They're fast, and they just press their buttons and they just do things. I feel like we are way more like technical, where everything has to go right. We have like this very complex route. And then you just see them beat our time, and it just looks easy, and they just do insane damage, and I don't even know like where they get the damage from sometimes. So in some cases, for sure, it's nice with the extra knowledge and experience from playing for so long. But I think Miscount is a prime example where it's not needed at all to have like all this knowledge, because I think they just hold W and they just do damage and it works. I might be wrong here, Verb, but that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from your team. You just go crazy and you go big, and you might die here and there, but it doesn't really matter because you're so fast, right? And the strats are not usually the most in-depth. But yeah, for your team it works wonders, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we're obviously trying, or everyone is trying to play into their team's strength, right? I think going into this tournament, we are not expecting to be maybe more consistent and have these like perfect routes with Deathless Run. And then we kind of maybe just decide to lean more into these like more riskier routes where we are more confident that we can beat their timers, for example. And then we just need to like do these harder routes and just need to like lock in and just actually do it on the tournament day. And I think that is like, maybe it's like harder, it's less consistent, but it's a real path to victory, I would say.
Yeah,
I
because
love
it
the
was
description of your team as fearless. It's if you ever have to change your name, that's what it should be.
no, but I know both in the mud load, I think you had 4 deaths and you were faster than we were. Same with Prior, I think you had 4 deaths. Maybe not in the end one you had, I don't remember, but you were also faster than we were. The other ones I don't fully remember, but it just felt like you just did some crazy pulls, and even if it didn't always work out, you were still like incredibly fast compared to what we did, I guess.
Toba, where does Perplexed fall on that spectrum of fearless to methodical?
I mean, I think some of it comes from maybe Wunderbar would be more technical because of the old MDI having more experience there and everything like that, and then Miscount being more of like a key pushing team. So maybe that comes into the equation somewhere. I don't like fully. I probably don't fully understand the strengths of our team yet, since fully new here. But you know, Perplex have always been good at making these really fast paths and finding, you know, this optimized speed in certain places. So I'm gonna say maybe it's like somewhere between the two approaches. I don't know exactly how to quantify it, but you know,
That's a good safe answer. That's
Yeah.
we'll take it. Like I just joined this team, man. I'm not trying to get fired.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard. I mean, I didn't play the old format with this team, so I can't fully speak on that. But I know that they used to have pretty good paths, and you know, they would always have like really insane time trial speeds as well. It's like stuff like that makes me think.
I think last
Next
time they almost won, right? I think they even should have won.
Yeah.
And that was a not told, what's it called? Where you playing the dragons, but they had a mistake and like you were actually like ahead and they should have won in MDI. I think the last one they played.
Yeah, I think they were pretty much the favorites to win that one, but lost it at the last moment.
Cool. We are up to about 5 minutes left, and I just want to ask one last question. We'll start with you, Verb. What was the biggest surprise that you saw this weekend?
Ooh. I mean, I guess it was the 22 theater. It just has to be. I mean, the route was just crazy, innovative, and we just didn't think it was possible. But that must have been the biggest bombshell, for sure.
Yeah, it's a good answer. What about you now?
I think it was it's either Miscount's Motherload Day 2, where we felt like we were kind of ahead at the time, and we felt really good about ourselves, and then we just don't time it. We look at the Warcraft stream, and we see that they just go in there and time it within an hour, and we were like, that was crazy. But or like Mandatory is Day 3. I think Mandatory played extremely well Day 3, where we felt like they didn't. We were more afraid of like Miscount going into Day 3 than Mandatory. But then Mandatory like really stepped up a level for Day 3, and they played extremely well. And we almost, you know, we kind of won on overtime, I guess, whatever you want to say. But the biggest hammer, I must have been like Miscounts just like going in and doing that 23 mudload so fast.
Yeah, I love it. And Toba, what would you say was the biggest surprise you saw this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the TOP was the biggest surprise. I mean, as well, the 23 motherload from Miscount was like crazy. I feel like we didn't sort of believe in them to be able to do it, and then they just did it with this like insane timer, so they like proved us wrong, you know. It's like respect to that for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of all of the keys that were done were even some timers in certain places. like the 23 Motherload, we probably knew it was there, but we didn't know how exactly attainable it was. 22 Cinder, we didn't go into, but we knew it was like possible timer wise, just because of how fast you would be on the 21, and then but the 22 TOP was definitely not like in our minds like that would be possible. Apart from a couple of days before, I was like, I was looking at the TOP path and I was like, this is just so bad. Like, like what you're doing in this dungeon for the most part is just so bad. But we didn't have that much time to put into it, I guess. And yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Gentlemen, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and for all of the viewers for an incredible Global Finals weekend. It was legitimately the most excited I've ever been watching an MDI, right down to the wire. Super, super impressive performance by everybody. We're going to just give one last chance for you to tell everybody where they can find you. We'll go reverse order from how we did it the first time. So Tobo, where can folks find you?
Find me on twitch.tv/Tobo, and that's about it.
Okay. And Verb?
Well, you can find me on twitch.tv/VerbiaTV.
Perfect. And Robin?
You can find me on twitch.tv/now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, all three of you, so much for taking the time to do this. I know you're all very busy. We really do appreciate it here. And for Raider.io, I'm Sean. This has been a roundtable. We'll see you next season.